A wise teacher of medicine once said, "A student of medicine will forget more than people usually learn in their lifetime." I find this incredibly true. And today, we're going to begin our journey of learning about medicine. We're going to have a basic understanding of what we need to survive in life, how to describe things like movement or anatomical positions. We'll talk about systems, and we'll wrap up with homeostasis and what it means. Our goal is to understand the levels of organization within the human body and be able to name and describe the major organ systems. We should be able to understand how each of our systems interact and maintain the stability and functionality necessary for life. With life, we have the foundational building blocks. Matter, anything that takes up space and mass. Our coffee cup on our counter right now. Mass, a physical property that determines an object's weight based on the Earth's gravitational pull. Elements, the fundamental substances that compose matter. Most living organisms need about 20 elements to survive. To survive, we need our essentials. Food, our nutrients, things like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. With food, we must have water. To breathe, we need oxygen. And to drive gases in our bloodstream, we need pressure. And we must have heat. We also have to have an understanding of our pH scale. pH of a solution is defined as a level of acidity or alkalinity. The scale ranges 0 to 14, pure water being a 7, and 0 is the most acidic, and 14 is the most basic. It's determined by the concentration of the hydrogen ions in a solution that determines the pH. The more hydrogen ions in a solution, the lower the pH. How do we describe life? We see life as being defined as any system capable of performing functions such as eating, metabolizing, excreting, moving, breathing, growing, reproducing, or responding to an external stimuli. It has the capacity and the ability for homeostasis. As humans, we have a life cycle. We grow from our birth to infancy to toddler years, to our childhood, to our adolescent or teenage era, to adulthood, to our late adulthood. Our average life expectancy is just under 80 years. Our body's organization. So when we talk about organizing the body, we can talk about it two different ways. We can talk about it via a systems approach, or we can talk about a region approach. When we talk about systems, we're talking about organ systems. We'll talk about this shortly. Or a region approach, when we're talking about general regions of anatomy. Before we do that, let's talk about these anatomical terms. Gross or macroscopic anatomy is at large structures that can be seen without a microscope. In microscopic anatomy, as you guessed, is small structures that require a microscope to be seen. Examples include cytology, the study of cells, or histology, the study of body tissues. When we talk about topographic anatomy, this is the ability to identify superficial landmarks to make accurate assessments. Landmarks make up the body's topography. Our spine. Our spinal cord is one of the main parts of our nervous systems. It originates from the bottom of our brainstem, and it carries nerve signals from our brain to the rest of our body. It's covered in layers of tissues called meninges, just like the ones that surround our brain. And these protective tissues include the dura mater, the anchoid matter, and the pia mater. It typically stops growing around age 5. Our cavities. Our cavities help house body organs. So we have our dorsal that contains our cranial cavity and our spinal cavity. Our dorsal cavity is posterior. Our ventral cavity contains our thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic cavity. It's our front and anterior. Don't forget that our diaphragm separates the abdominal and thoracic cavity. We may be very used to, from EMT, our abdominal quadrants. Think about two imaginary lines intersecting the umbilicus. But don't forget about our abdominal sections, which we have 9. This gives us a little bit more specific of a region to reference than just the quadrants. So when we talk about structural organization of us, humans, we start at the chemical layer. And the chemical layer include things like water, proteins, carbohydrate, lipids, nucleic acids, salts, as well as food and drinks. Then we move to the cellular level and the tissue level, to the organ, to the system, and the organism. Don't forget the basic structural and functional unit of life is the cell. As we work up the system, things like tissues work together to perform one or more functions, like cardiac muscle cells. Things like our stomach, liver, and small intestines that are organs make up our digestive system. And with 10 or so systems, we make up the organism, us. Systems. An organ is composed of 2 or more types of tissue. And when we have multiple organs performing the same general function, it helps make up a system. For example, the mouth, the trachea, and lungs help make the respiratory system.
The human body is a complex network of cells, tissues, and organs that together make life possible. 10 major systems are responsible for the body's functions: skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, nervous, endocrine, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary, reproductive. The skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, and nervous systems in particular create an infrastructure that facilitates the other systems. The adult skeletal system is a framework of over 200 bones. They hold the body together, give it shape, and protect its organs and tissues. The skeleton also provides anchor points for the muscular system, which includes 3 types of muscles: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. They are found throughout the body and facilitate movement. Nestled within these muscles is the cardiovascular system, a pipeline that includes the heart, blood vessels, and the blood itself. Also called the circulatory system, the cardiovascular system delivers oxygen, white blood cells, hormones, and nutrients throughout the body. Lastly, the nervous system is a communication network of nerve cells that the body uses to transmit information and coordinate bodily functions. It's comprised of the brain, the hub of sensory and intellectual activity, the spinal cord, and the many cranial and spinal nerves that emanate from them. This infrastructure, created by neurons, blood, muscles, and bones allows three other systems to regulate the body's environment: the endocrine, lymphatic, and urinary systems. The endocrine system is a series of glands that use information carried by the nervous system to help regulate the body's processes. Thanks to this neural connection, endocrine glands, such as the thyroid, are aware of the amount of hormones and other chemicals they need to produce. These chemicals are then distributed throughout the body by way of the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular and nervous systems are also utilized by the lymphatic system, a collection of lymph nodes and vessels that help regulate the body's defenses. Also called the immune system, the lymphatic system uses neural pathways to transmit information about affected areas of the body and then sends out healing agents like white blood cells via the bloodstream. Another key regulatory system is the urinary system, which includes the kidneys, ureters, bladder, and urethra. The urinary or renal system maintains the body's electrolyte levels and filters waste from the blood. This waste is sent through the blood vessels into the kidneys and then expelled as urine. All of these systems require energy to function, and that's where the respiratory and digestive systems come in. The respiratory system is a group of passageways and organs that extracts life-giving oxygen from the air we breathe. Air enters the body through nasal cavities, travels down the throat, and is then transported to the lungs. The lungs extract oxygen for the body to use and then expel a carbon dioxide byproduct when we exhale. Energy can also come in the form of food. The digestive system is an approximately 30-foot series of organs that convert food into fuel. Food enters the system through the mouth, then moves into the esophagus, the stomach, and the intestines. Nutrients are absorbed into the body while solid waste is expelled through the anal canal, the end of the digestive tract. No matter the role, size, or shape of any of the body's systems, each began with the reproductive system. This system is responsible for creating life. The primary organs involved differ between the sexes, with ovaries, fallopian tubes, the uterus, and vagina found in women, and testes and a sperm channel found in men. Together, fertilization may occur, organ systems form, and then a child is born. Humans are complicated organisms, but when our 10 major organ systems are healthy, they ensure our well-being.
A system, two or more different organs. An example is skeletal. Bones and joints support and protect and produce blood cells. So the skeletal system. So let's go over some systems at a high level. The nervous system includes our brain, spinal cord, and nerves. It's one of the most complex organ systems we have in our body. It's responsible for fundamental functions of higher level functions. Its main functions include monitoring internal and external environments, integration of sensory information, coordination of voluntary and involuntary systems. Its two main portions, the central and peripheral, and our peripheral is further divided in the somatic and autonomic system. Our circulatory system is a completely closed system. Another name of the system, commonly called, is cardiovascular system. It has two circuits, our systemic system throughout the body and our pulmonary circulation between the heart and lungs. Our systemic system carries oxygen-rich blood from the left ventricle through the body back to the right atrium. As blood passes through the tissue and organs, it gives oxygen and nutrients. It absorbs waste and carbon dioxide. The elimination of cellular waste in blood goes to the liver and kidneys. And our pulmonary circulation travels between the heart and lungs. The passage of oxygen-poor blood from the right ventricle through the lungs back to the left atrium. The gain of oxygen, loss of carbon dioxide as blood passes through the lungs. Our respiratory system. Gas exchange between atmosphere and cells. protecting the respiratory surfaces from dehydration, temperature shifts, and invading pathogens. It produces auditory communication, and it provides an olfactory sensation to the central nervous system. Or muscular system. Muscles usually function in groups. Our body consists of over 600 muscles. Some of the main components: skeletal muscles. These are voluntary muscles attached to bones, responsible for movement like walking, lifting, and maintaining posture. Skeletal muscle movement results from muscle contraction or relaxation. Skeletal muscle includes all the muscles attached to the skeleton. Cardiac muscles, found only in the heart. This is an involuntary muscle, and it contracts rhythmically to pump blood through the body. Or smooth muscle, located in the walls of internal organs and stomach, like the stomach and intestines. Smooth muscle helps the involuntary movements like digestion and blood and vessel regulation. When we think about voluntary and involuntary, skeletal muscles are voluntary, consciously controlled, while cardiac and smooth muscles are involuntary. Endocrine system. The endocrine system is a network of glands that release hormones into the bloodstream and regulate the organs through the body. Hypothalamus, pituitary gland, thyroid, parathyroid gland, thymus, pancreas, adrenal glands, pineal, and gonads are examples. The hormones released in the endocrine system are controlled by many important functions in the body, including growth and development, metabolism, and reproduction. A lymphatic system, often considered a parallel to the circulatory system. Lymph circulates through the body in lymph vessels that travel close to major arteries and veins. Foreign materials filtered through the lymph into the lymph nodes. Our digestive system. We have two major divisions: our alimentary canal and our accessory digestive organs. Our digestive system has these key functions: ingestion. Materials enter the digestive tract through the mouth. Mechanical processing. Materials are crushed and broken by chewing into smaller fragments, making them easier and more easily able to move through digestive tract, when our molars and teeth tear up and mash food. Digestion is when the chemical breakdown of food into particulate is small enough to be absorbed in the circulatory system. Secretion, the release of water and acids and buffers and enzymes in the digestive tract. Absorption, the movement of organic substrates, electrolytes, vitamins, and water across the epithelium of the digestive tract into the interstitial fluid. Excretion, the removal of waste products from the body fluids mixed with residue that cannot be digested. Integumentary system is the largest system of the human body. It serves the interface between the body and the outside world. Consists of skin and accessory structures such as hair, nails, glands. It has a crucial role in maintaining constancy of the internal environment, and does so by performing the following functions: protecting the body and the environment, temperature regulation, whether constricting or dilating, fluid regulation, preventing us from losing too much fluid, sensation, transmitting information from the environment to the brain, inflammatory, when you have injuries and wounds, sensory function. We have sensory receptors in the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and other parts to detect stimuli. Those stimuli are converted into electrical signals. Those signals are sent to the brain via the peripheral nervous system. The brain processes those signals and interprets them as sensations. And the brain then reacts and responds. Our urinary system controls our discharge of waste. It helps control our fluid balance in the body. It filters and eliminates the waste. It also controls our pH balance. Our male and female reproductive systems. Males produce sperm in the testes. Females produce eggs in the ovaries. Our reproductive system is essential for sustaining and creating life. Balancing life. When we talk about balancing life, we want to think about the term homeostasis. And simply, homeostasis is stabilizing internal conditions. It's a constant balance. It's a maintenance of a stable internal environment. When an individual doesn't have enough to eat, the body adjusts by slowing down metabolism. So he or she expends fewer calories. This adaptation conserves the limited energy available for the inadequate diet. Homeostasis is dynamic balance between the autonomic branches, the parasympathetic, rest and digest, and sympathetic, fight and flight. And it's this dynamic balance between the two that works to stabilize. So when we talk about homeostasis, we also need to talk about feedback loops. And a feedback loop is simply a stimulus from an external environment, a receptor that registers the stimulus, that relays it to a control center, which is a set point, to an effectors, things like muscles or glands, and the body has a response. If we look at this in a circle, we have our stimulus, we have a receptor, we have our control center, and our effectors, and our response. And these feedback loops are used constantly within our body to help stabilize and maintain homeostasis. There's two main types of feedback loops, a positive and a negative feedback loop. Once again, the goal of a feedback loop is to maintain homeostasis. So we're going to have a couple examples on feedback loops, specifically positive and negative. A positive feedback loop promotes in the same direction. It amplifies change. A negative feedback loop reverses the direction of a process. So positive promotes, negative reverses the direction. So to help illustrate this, I have a video from the Neva sisters.
Did you know just sitting here right now, you're doing something absolutely remarkable? Well, your cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, yes, we just leveled up those biological levels of organization, they're all working towards something called homeostasis. It's a state of balance. Yes, homeostasis means many things in your body. For example, that your blood stays within a certain pH level range. It means that your blood glucose remains within a certain range. It means your internal body temperature stays within a certain range. See, we've mentioned the major body systems before and that they work together. And today we're going to talk about how they work together using something called positive and negative feedback, and also how this relates to homeostasis. So many years ago, I had a pet bearded dragon. Her name was Debbie, and she was the best lizard ever. Debbie used to sit on our couch with me when I'd watch TV, and she loved to have her chin scratched. I even got her a bearded dragon leash so I could take her outside. Yeah, they make those. Anyway, Debbie loved her heat lamp. She would sit under the heat lamp on her rock, and when she got too hot, she would get off her rock and out of the heat lamp range and go somewhere else. She had a huge enclosure, too, because I wanted Debbie to be a happy lizard so she could find an ideal temperature. Well, why all this talk about Debbie? Well, Debbie is an example of an animal that some people refer to as cold-blooded, or a fancier term, ectotherm. We actually like the fancier term a bit better, though, because her blood isn't necessarily cold. Her body temperature can fluctuate with the environment. But not you. You are warm-blooded, or the fancier term, an endotherm. Your body works hard to keep the internal temperature it keeps. It's also a beautiful example of something called negative feedback. Before we define it, let us show you this example. Say you're in an environment that is very hot, like being outside in the Texas summer heat. That's typically hot. Thanks to nerves which can act as sensors, the brain notices this. It will send signals to counteract this variable. Sweat glands do what they do best: sweat. Heat is lost as that sweat evaporates off your skin. You may have some redness too. That's because your blood vessels are getting wider, dilating, in order to help get rid of that heat. And the result, whether you realize it or not, helps you lower your body temperature. But wait, what if you go inside now and the AC is blasting? You'll stop sweating. You may even shiver. The muscle contractions of shivering can generate heat. And those blood vessels will now decrease in diameter size, constrict, to help you conserve the heat, because that makes it harder for the heat to escape. Your body temperature can increase then. This is negative feedback. So a simplified definition, negative feedback is when some variable triggers a counteracting response in order to come back to some set point. If we consider that this whole thing is actually a negative feedback loop, we can see that the negative feedback brings the body back to the set point, which in this case is a stable temperature, keeping homeostasis. Negative feedback is also going on in the regulation of your glucose, your blood sugar. Okay, we're really simplifying this here, as we often do. But when glucose, blood sugar, is too high, one hormone that is released is insulin. I always imagine insulin as this hormone that makes the cells say, "Feed me," because it has the ability to make cells take in glucose. On the flip side, if glucose is too low in the blood, a hormone called glucagon can be released. This hormone can have many effects, and one of them is that it can cause the liver to release glucose into the blood. There's more to the regulation of blood sugar than this, but you can see how this is negative feedback. You have counteracting responses here in order to keep homeostasis. So, what about positive feedback? Positive feedback is when, instead of getting a counteracting response to some variable, you instead intensify the variable. Positive feedback can be like more, instead of let's counteract this. The example that always stuck with me when I was a student is the example about the human baby being born. In biology classrooms everywhere, it's a classic example. When a human baby is ready to be born, there is pressure on the cervix, and that pressure and the hormones involved cause contractions of the uterus, because that's a big part about how the baby is going to be born. More release of hormones will equal more contractions and pressure, which will cause more release of hormones. And more release of hormones will mean more contractions and pressure. Contractions help get the baby out, but it's also a part of a beautiful illustration of what positive feedback can do. So why do we care about feedback? Other than, the importance of negative feedback in maintaining homeostasis and the role of positive feedback in many body processes. Well, we also need to understand feedback so we can understand what is happening when there is a problem in the feedback systems. One example, perhaps you've heard of type 1 diabetes. It's a disorder that can mean that your pancreas, which is an organ that is involved with making some hormones like insulin, is not working correctly. Insulin is not produced, and because of that, one issue is that you're not going to be able to get glucose, the blood sugar, into your cells. Now, glucose outside of the cells cannot be used in cellular respiration. The cells need to take the glucose in to make ATP energy in cellular respiration. Therefore, your cells need to be able to take in the glucose to survive. So many type 1 diabetics need to give themselves insulin and monitor their blood sugar because the negative feedback may not work as it should. Well, that's it for the Meet the...
So negative feedback loops, they help maintain homeostasis, they oppose the initial change, and they reduce output. The majority of feedback loops, they bring the body closer to its normal state. Negative feedback loops have a brake effect. Blood sugar regulation is one of the most common examples. Another common example is thermoregulation. So a nerve cell in the skin, a sensor, the temperature regulator in the brain is the control, and things like the sweat glands are the effector. So if it's too warm, the nerves detect it, relay it over to the brain, and produce sweat through the glands. If it's too cold, the sensor relays over to the control, relays to the effector, and activates shivering. And once the body maintains or achieves normal temperature, the effector stops. So negative feedback loops are commonly used for regulation and maintenance. In a control system, a stimulus initiates a response that reverses or decreases the stimulus, thereby stopping the response until the stimulus occurs again. The other type of feedback loop is a positive feedback loop. It maintains homeostasis. It reinforces the initial change and amplifies the change. It's short-lived, it's targeted, and it increases output. Many things that are example of positive feedback loops quickly need change. Things like a cut and needing to clot, or maybe labor. So in the labor example, as the baby growth takes up space in the uterus, the stretch receptors relay over to the control center, the brain, and signals the release of oxytocin, which the effectors release oxytocin and cause the uterine muscles to contract. These contractions get stronger until the baby is delivered. Another very common example is clotting. Control system that requires an external event to stop the stimulus. You can see when we get cut, we need quick change. So the body amplifies it, throwing platelets and starting clotting cascade until the injury has been solved. Unfortunately, positive feedback loops can have the potential to be self-perpetrating and harmful.